Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My phone started vibrating across the counter, and my mom's name flashed. I almost let it ring out, which I regret now. I answered on the last buzz and forced a quick hello. She skipped any greeting and dropped straight in. "Your cousin got in, big news. I am Aaron, 27, and this is the moment everything tilts." My stomach tightened before I even knew why. "Got in where?" I asked, already bracing. "In the city, college, he worked so hard for this." Her voice had that bright edge that means a decision already exists. "That's great," I said, and I meant it for half a second. I leaned on the counter and waited for the catch. It came right away, like it had been sitting there loaded. "So he'll stay with you," she went on. "Just while he does his degree." I laughed, which was a bad instinct. The sound came out short and wrong and annoyed her. "Wait, what do you mean stay with me?" I asked. "He needs a place, you have a place, it fits." She talked like she was explaining basic math to a child. I looked around my apartment and did fast, panicked math. 1 bedroom, tiny living room, bathroom that barely counts. Every inch of that space was bought with long weeks. My name on the lease is the only reason I sleep. None of that seemed to exist for her right then. "Mom, I don't have space for another person." I kept my tone light, like we joked about this. She exhaled hard through the receiver, that familiar long sigh. "You live alone in New York, Aaron, you can manage." There it was, the accusation wrapped as a compliment. "I barely manage now," I answered, my hand shaking a little. "I pay rent, utilities, everything, it is tight." I heard a chair scrape on her side like she sat down. "Tuition is handled already," she said, like that solved everything. "We just need you to step up with housing." "Just housing is the most expensive part of this," I pushed. "I am not a dorm, I am barely keeping this spot." Silence hit for a beat, long enough to sting. When she spoke again, her tone had turned colder. "Family helped you, now you help family." That line always lands heavy, even when I know the script. I felt that familiar mix of shame and stubborn anger. "Yes, you helped me, I know that, I remember." Saying that felt like handing over a weapon she already held. "And now you call in the debt," I thought, not out loud. "He is 17, he knows nobody there," she kept going. "You know the subway, you know the area, you can guide him." Her voice softened on that word, guide, like she offered me honor. All I heard was unpaid babysitter and unpaid landlord combined. I pressed my thumb hard into the countertop to stay calm. "I work full-time, I leave early and get home late." I spoke slower, trying not to snap and ruin my point. "I cannot watch a teenager and keep my job." "You are not watching a child," she answered, sharper now. "You are letting him use your sofa, stop exaggerating." That word hit a nerve, exaggerating, like I invented my stress. I looked toward my living room and pictured his stuff everywhere. I pictured long nights, noise, doors never closed, zero privacy. My chest felt tight and I had to breathe shallow. "Where is he supposed to sleep then?" I asked. "Couch, air mattress, you used to be flexible," she replied. "We all made sacrifices when you needed a place downtown." That was not true in the way she framed it. But arguing the details felt like shouting into a storm. She smelled blood and I knew she saw me hesitating. "I never asked to move in with anyone for years," I tried. "I never told someone to just deal with my presence." "Are you serious right now?" she cut in. "You talk like we are strangers off the street." The word stranger hung there like a threat between us. I realized she had not asked me anything. There had been no, "Would you be open to this?" The whole call was a rollout of a completed plan. It made my skin crawl how little my answer mattered. I think that was the moment I stopped laughing it off. "Has he already been told he is staying here?" I asked. My voice dropped and I heard how flat it sounded. She hesitated just for a second, which told me everything. "Well, we mentioned the idea," she replied, too casual. "He is excited, he knows you will take care of him." My head buzzed at that word, knows, not hopes, knows. So in their version, I was already a done deal. Somewhere out there my cousin thought he had housing secured. Meanwhile I stood barefoot in my own place feeling cornered. It felt less like a favor and more like a trap. "Mom, you should not have promised anything," I pushed. "I did not promise," she snapped back, voice rising. We said it made sense because it does, it obviously does. Each word pressed harder like she could bully the logic. I realized if I waited longer, this would be permanent. I am not agreeing to this, I said, finally clear. I heard my own voice and almost did not cognize it. There was no joking tone, no softening words, just no. On the line, everything went quiet except her breathing. That pause felt longer than the whole call so far. Wow, she said at last, low and angry. I did not think you had become this selfish. The word selfish cut sharper than I expected. I flinched. You have one small place to yourself and you cling. She made it sound like greed, not survival. I wanted to yell about bills and the lease and risk. I wanted to read the terms line by line to her. Instead, I paced the narrow strip between sink and door. You cannot just move someone into my home without asking, I said. My hand shook so hard I had to switch the phone. You are acting like we are dumping a stranger on you, she argued. This is your cousin, you used to play together every holiday. That was years ago, and people change fast after high school. I bit my tongue because she hated when I challenged nostalgia. He is not a random person, she repeated like that ended debate. He is still another person in my space, I insisted. All his stuff, his schedule, his guests, his mess. The word mess slipped out and she seized it like proof. So that is what you think of him already, she shouted. You decided he is a burden before he even arrives. I closed my eyes and pressed my forehead to the cabinet. I knew if I softened now, the fight was over. Mom, listen, I am saying no, I said again. Clear, slower, each word dropped like a brick between us. On the other end, everything went even colder. I will let your father know how you feel, she said. That line always means reinforcements and not the good kind. You enjoy your little life there, alone, since you prefer that. Her voice turned sharp on that last word, prefer. Then the call ended, just a hard click in dead air. I stayed there with the phone in my hand, heart pounding. I wanted to call back and fix it and also not. Part of me whispered that I had finally drawn a line. Another part counted the ways this would blow up later. I did not know yet that a line to them is just a suggestion. My phone started buzzing again before I even left my building. The same chat bubble popped up over and over. Family group. I knew this was fallout from the call and my chest tightened. I opened it anyway, like touching a hot stove on purpose. The first message was from my mom, long and dramatic. She wrote that my cousin had worked incredibly hard for this chance. She wrote that he just needed a roof and some support. Then she wrote that I refused to help my own blood. That sentence sat there like a verdict, not a description. Every message after that hit like a quick slap. Amazing, city life really changed her. At least we know where we stand now. Some people forget who carried them before they had anything. It felt less like a chat and more like a public trial. I stood near the entrance, people pushing past me. Everyone else rushed for trains and rides and late coffee. I just stared at my screen while my family built a story. In their version, I was comfortable, cold, and ungrateful. There was no mention of rent, rules, or actual space. My aunt jumped in next with a paragraph of guilt. We always opened our doors without thinking twice. She lives alone and can't share a couch for a while. She acts like we are asking for money or a car. The typing bubbles under that never stopped, just kept pulsing. I knew I should walk, move, do anything physical. Instead, I stood there frozen, letting the notifications pile up. One cousin posted a laughing emoji and a clown face. Another wrote, New York really got to her head, huh? I felt my face burn, though no one around knew anything. I finally wrote something short, hands shaking over the keyboard. I have a very small place, my lease is strict. I can't take on another person for years. I reread it 3 times, trying to keep it neutral. Then I hit send and immediately regretted how defensive it looked. The answer came fast, not even a minute later. So you care more about rules than your own family. That line came from my father, short and heavy. He rarely typed in that chat, which made it worse. Seeing his name there made my stomach drop like an elevator. I wanted to scream that rules can get you evicted. I wanted to write that this apartment is all I have. Instead, I opened a new message and erased it 5 times. Each version either sounded angry or desperate or both. Everything I typed looked ugly when I imagined them reading it. You could talk to your landlord and work something out. That came from another relative who has never had one. You act like this is impossible. You just don't want the inconvenience. I realized nobody in that conversation cared how this actually worked. I walked toward the subway entrance because my body needed movement. The phone kept lighting up in my hand like a siren. You forget who watched you when you were younger. You forget who helped you get through school. Apparently, my whole history was now a receipt they pulled out. To be fair, part of me knew there was some truth. I have received help from them in different ways. That part of me shrank a little and stayed quiet. The louder part was the one gripping the phone. The one thinking help is not the same as ownership. I typed again, slower this time, trying to breathe steady. I'm not saying no forever, I'm saying I'm not allowed. I could get in real trouble if I ignore the lease. Please understand this isn't about him as a person. I watched the typing dots appear before I could second guess. He isn't a stranger, stop using that word. That line came from my mom in an instant. He is a good kid and he looks up to you. You should be honored to guide him through this new chapter. They made it sound like a prestigious role, not a burden. I did not even remember calling him a stranger. Maybe I had used that word on the phone earlier. Maybe she just filled it in herself for dramatic effect. Either way, I was now fighting something I never wrote. That is the worst part of group texts, they rewrite you. Look, I work full-time and my hours are rough. I can't manage hosting someone long-term on top of everything. I pressed my thumb hard on each word, trying for calm. Why are you acting like he'll ruin your life? My aunt again, with a line that made me clench my jaw. He would not ruin my life. He would wreck the small bit of control I finally had. Try explaining that difference in a group chat without sounding dramatic. You can't, everything collapses into you hate us or you love us. There is no middle ground when everyone is texting in all caps. A picture popped up next and that hit differently. It was my cousin holding his college acceptance letter. He looked happy and shy and proud all at once. Under it someone wrote, "He thinks he has a place with you." That line stung more than any insult they had thrown. I realized they had already built the future in his head. Of course he would be excited to move into the city. He probably imagined late nights, freedom, and a cool older relative. He did not see the landlord, the bills, the stress. They made me the villain in his movie without asking me. Guilt hit hard right then, heavier than the anger. I remembered being that age and desperate to get out. I remembered how any offer of shelter felt like salvation. I do not blame him for holding onto that idea. I blame the adults who handed it to him with my name on it. I stepped to the side at the bottom of the stairs. I texted him privately for the first time in months. "Hey, I heard you're coming to school here. Congrats, that's huge." I stared at the screen, then added, "What did they tell you about housing?" The reply came quicker than I wanted. "Hey, yeah, I'm really excited. They said I'll be staying with you while I study. I've been telling my friends I already have a place set." My throat tightened so much I had to swallow twice. He sent a smiling emoji after that, as if this was simple. Like he was worried I might think he wasn't grateful enough. Every part of me wanted to reassure him and not crush that. At the same time, my whole body screamed that this was wrong. I felt trapped between his expectation and my actual reality. "I'm glad you're happy about coming here. I just need to talk with them about some details. I have rules in my building I can't break." I watched the dots flicker, then disappear, then return again. He finally wrote, "Okay, just let me know if something changes." That last message was polite, careful, and a little scared. He probably sensed something was off and did not push. Which only made me feel worse, because none of this was his fault. I screenshotted our conversation and stared at it in silence. Proof that this mess was already bigger than one group chat. Back in the family thread, they had not slowed down. "Of course she texted him privately," someone wrote. "She'll twist things so he sides with her." They had no idea what I had actually sent him. They decided my motives before I even moved my thumbs. I wanted to defend myself again and again and again. Explain that I was trying to be honest and kind at once. Explain that I was not plotting some big divide. But every time I tried to type, my hands shook harder. It felt like arguing with a crowd that had already voted. My father sent one more message and the whole chat went quiet. End of discussion, we are disappointed. Just 3 short sentences. No explanation, no question, no opening for a reply. The weight of those words landed harder than all the others combined. For a second I almost typed, "Fine, he can come," just to stop it. Not because I changed my mind, just to kill the tension. It was like standing near the edge of a cliff and leaning forward. One more step and everything would be locked in. I could practically feel my future shrinking as I considered that. Instead, I locked my phone and shoved it in my bag. The sound of trains and announcements swallowed the last vibration. I stood there while people brushed past in every direction. I knew if I looked at that chat again, I might cave. So I rode to work with my jaw clenched and my eyes burning. Later at my desk, I opened the chat one more time. Not to answer, just to see if they had moved on. No new messages. Only my family's words frozen on the screen like graffiti. I hit mute for a week and stared at that option for a long time. I did not leave the conversation, I was not ready for that war. But I silenced them, which felt like a tiny act of rebellion. A small, quiet line drawn inside a noisy storm. I knew they would keep planning around me anyway. I just did not realize yet how far they were willing to go offline. The buzzer went off like an alarm and yanked me upright. I checked the time and winced because it was early. My head still felt heavy from another bad night of sleep. I hit the button and asked who it was, already annoyed. "Hey, it's me." The voice sounded familiar and weirdly cheerful through the speaker. "It's your favorite cousin, I'm downstairs with my stuff." For a second my brain rejected every word in that sentence. I stared at the intercom and nothing came out of my mouth. He rang again, more insistent now, like this was planned. "You there? I've got 2 bags, this thing is heavy." I pressed the door release on pure reflex and hated myself. By the time I opened my apartment door, he was there. He stood in the hallway with luggage stacked around him. Out of all the futures I pictured, this one still hit hard. He smiled wide and lifted one hand like this was a reunion. "Surprise." He dragged one suitcase closer, already angled toward my doorway. "They dropped me off at the station, I grabbed a ride." He talked fast, almost breathless, like he was proud of the route. I did not step aside, my hand braced against the frame. "You're here today." It sounded stupid the second it left my mouth. He glanced at his watch and then back at me, confused. "Yeah, movin' weekend, remember." He nudged his bag with his foot and laughed softly. "They said it's better if I settle in before orientation starts." That single word lodged in my mind and would not move. Move in. Not crash for a bit. Not stay a few nights until we talk. No, we were already at move-in. "I never agreed to that," I said low and slow. My chest tightened again, the same way it had on the phone. He blinked, thrown off for the first time since he arrived. "What do you mean? We talked about this all summer." I stepped back then, more from shock than permission. He took it as an invitation and dragged the bags inside. The wheels rattled over the floor, way too loud in my place. Each sound felt like a nail in a door closing behind me. He looked around with this open, curious expression that hurt. "Whoa, this is nicer than I pictured." He dropped his backpack on the couch, already marking territory. "I can put my stuff in that corner if that's okay." "You can't just move in," I said, words coming quicker now. He didn't sit, but his shoulders dropped like the energy shifted. "They told me you were on board, they promised it was fine." His hand tightened on the handle of the nearest bag. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry and useless. "What exactly did they tell you?" I asked, because I needed it clear. He blew out a breath and looked at the ceiling for a second. "That you were happy to help, that I'd stay here while I study." He said it like he was reciting a script he trusted. "They said you already sorted it with your building." He scratched the back of his neck, a nervous little movement. "And that you'd freak out at first, but you'd relax once I was here." There it was. In their story, I was a predictable obstacle, not a decision maker. A small part of me wanted to laugh at how accurate that sounded. A bigger part wanted to scream into a pillow until my throat hurt. "I never spoke to them about any building approval," I told him. He looked back at me, eyes narrowing as reality shifted. "So they didn't talk to your landlord at all?" His voice lost some of that easy confidence, which made me ache. I walked to the shelf where I kept my paperwork and grabbed the folder. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind raced ahead. I flipped to the page with the occupancy clause and held it out. Here, this is what I mean when I say I'm restricted. He skimmed the paragraph, eyes moving faster than his understanding. One occupant listed, no long-term guests without written permission. His mouth twisted, like the words tasted bad. People break stuff like this all the time, they barely check. I felt my jaw clench so hard it hurt. Maybe where you live they don't pay a ta. Ention, I answered quietly. My landlord is around a lot and I don't want trouble here. The image of a notice on my door flashed across my mind. He let the page fall back against the folder and rubbed his forehead. So what does that mean for me right now? He asked. I already left my old room, my stuff is in storage. His voice cracked a little on that last word and it hit me. None of this was hypothetical for him anymore. He had already stepped out of one life and into this hallway. I wanted to be angry only at my parents, but it spread wider. Into the system, into money, into every decision that cornered us here. Right now it means we need to talk about limits, I managed. I can let you stay for a short time while we figure it out. A week, maybe two, while we look at other options. Even saying that felt like I was pushing myself off a ledge. His eyes went wide like I had slapped him. A week. He pointed down at his bags as if I had forgotten them. They told me I'd be here for the whole program. I almost said they should have asked me first, but stopped. Throwing them under the bus in front of him felt cruel and tempting. Orientation starts soon, dorms are packed, I can't just grab one now. He looked around again, this time like the room might reject him. The guilt hit so hard it made my fingers tingle. You're not being kicked out today, I said, softer than before. I just need you to understand I'm not promising years. That word was important to me, even if it sounded small to him. He sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees. Okay, so what do you want me to do with my stuff? Unpack a little, keep it in bags. Every option sounded temporary even as he asked. Keep most of it packed for now, I answered after a beat. Take out only what you need for this week. He nodded slow, like the movement had weight. Do I at least have the couch? Yeah, I said because saying no outright felt impossible. You can use the couch for now, we'll figure out sleeping after that. My skin buzzed with unease as I heard myself. It sounded like I was making promises I had just refused. He stood again and unzipped the nearest suitcase. T-shirts came out in quick stacks, folded but already loosening. He tucked them beside the couch, building a little base camp. Each small pile announced, I live here now whether you like it or not. My phone started ringing on the counter and my stomach dropped. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. Can you get that? He asked, half inside his bag. It's probably my mom checking I arrived. I picked it up and saw my mother's name glowing at me. Of course she timed it for when he was already inside. I hit speaker without thinking because I wanted everything clear. Hi, he's here, I said, keeping my tone flat. There you are, her voice poured out, warm and triumphant. How's the new college kid settling in? She sounded like a host after a successful surprise party. He just got in, I answered, glancing at him by the couch. Good, we were worried he'd be stuck on the platform with those bags. She laughed and he smiled weakly at the sound. You're taking good care of him already, I knew you would. Every word felt aimed more at me than at him. Mom, we need to talk about how long he's staying. I cut in before she built more of that pretty script. We never agreed on a full degree, and you know that. My voice sounded tighter out loud than it did in my head. You are really doing this now with him standing there? She asked. The warmth dropped from her tone like someone flipped a switch. We discussed this, everyone knew the plan, he just arrived with everything. Her words stacked fast, leaving me no space to breathe. All of you discussed it, I corrected, heat rising up my neck. I was informed after you already promised him my place. He shifted his weight, eyes fixed on the floor between us. It felt awful having this fight with him as an unwilling witness. You are making this ugly for no reason, she insisted. He needs stability, not drama on his first day in a new city. You can revisit details later, right now he just needs to feel welcome. She wrapped guilt and urgency into one neat package. I looked at him, shoulders hunched, hands still on the zipper. He looked younger in that moment, smaller than I remembered. That image fought hard against my fear of losing my apartment. "Welcome and homeless if I get thrown out," I almost said. "I'm not trying to embarrass him," I answered instead. "I have strict terms here and I can't ignore them. I offered a short stay, we can help him find something else." I forced each sentence out steady, even as my heart pounded. On the phone, silence stretched just long enough to sting. Then her voice came back, cooler, edged with something sharp. "A short stay after we moved him out and brought him there. That is no. Help, that is cruelty dressed up as concern." His jaw tightened at that, like he felt the word cruelty land. I hated that she framed me that way in front of him. "You do what you want," she went on, louder now. "Just know everyone will remember who turned their back when it counted." "There are other options," I pushed, but she talked right over me. "No, you already made your position clear, I am done begging. We will figure something out for him if you throw him out." The word "throw" dug under my skin like a hook. Then the line went dead, abrupt, no goodbye, nothing. The apartment felt smaller after that call, like the air shifted. He stood there, caught between us, like he might apologize. Instead, he just swallowed and looked toward the couch again. "I don't want to make things harder for you," he murmured. "I'll keep my stuff out of the way, I'll be quiet." He tried to smile, the expression uneven and tired. "I'll find a job once classes start, maybe I can help with bills." That last offer twisted the knife in a different direction. He really believed he could fix this by working a few shifts. He didn't understand how fast costs eat those paychecks here. I didn't have the heart to crush that hope on the spot. "We'll talk about money later," I said, rubbing my temples. "Right now, just focus on your first week. And please remember, this situation is temporary unless something changes." The word temporary felt fragile, like it could snap under one more breath. He nodded and started arranging his things more carefully. A backpack tucked by the arm of the couch. A pair of shoes lined up near the door. Each item small, but together they drew a quiet border I couldn't miss. I walked into the kitchen area and gripped the edge of the counter. My phone lay face down, screen dark, mercifully silent. I knew there would be fresh messages waiting the second I flipped it. For now, I just stared ahead and listened to him move in behind me. I spread the lease on the counter and started tracing lines. Water ran in the bathroom while my cousin hummed off key. My eyes locked on the line about extra residents, not guests. Underneath that in bold, it listed fines and termination. I felt like I was reading a countdown I never agreed to. The clause was not vague at all, which annoyed me. "Unauthorized occupants will result in immediate action, including removal." I read that sentence 3 times until the words blurred. They did not care if the person was related or stranded. The paper cared about signatures and nothing else. The bathroom door opened and steam rushed across the room. He stepped out with wet hair, scrolling through his phone. "Orientation email came in," he said, sounding wired and excited. "They're already assigning groups and study stuff and tour buddies." He dropped onto the couch like it belonged to him now. I folded the lease in half and kept it beside me. "Did you ever check student housing again?" I asked quietly. He glanced up, thumb hovering over the screen. "There's a waitlist and it looks ugly right now." Then he studied my face like he already knew my angle. "You really think they're going to freak out about me?" he asked. "They barely notice who walks in or out of this place." He leaned back, stretching his legs toward the coffee table. "I'll stay invisible, I'll basically be background noise." He clearly did not understand how smaller spaces work. "If they decide to inspect, we are both in trouble," I said. "They can fine me, end the agreement, lock us both out." I heard my voice rising despite trying to keep it level. He frowned, sitting up like he finally heard the risk. "So what do you want me to do right now?" "I'm going to talk to the office later," I answered. "I'll ask what's possible, maybe they have a proper option." He nodded slowly, jaw tight, eyes dropping back to his phone. "I don't have anywhere else today, just so you know." That line sat between us like a weight. After work, I headed straight for the management office. My hands felt damp around the folder tucked under my arm. I rehearsed a neutral version in my head the whole way. Not cousin, not family, just generic someone visiting. Even that felt like a confession before I opened my mouth. The property manager looked up from their desk when I entered. "Can I help you with something?" they asked, flipping a page. "Yeah, I have a quick question about occupancy rules." My voice tried to sound casual and landed somewhere near nervous. I laid the folder down but kept my fingers on it. "I might have a relative stay with me for school," I started. I watched their expression the entire time for any reaction. "Short term at first, but maybe longer if things work out." "Is there a process to add someone like that officially?" Every word felt like it had a hidden alarm behind it. They leaned back and studied me for a moment. "How many bedrooms is your unit again?" they asked. "Ked. 1. "Then only you are allowed as a permanent resident there." They tapped the paper like it was already settled. "Guests are fine for brief visits," they went on. "Anything long-term is a modification, and we're not doing those now. If someone stays more than a couple of weeks, that is not a guest." They held my gaze long enough to make my stomach twist. "We take it seriously because of insurance and inspections." I swallowed hard and tried one more angle. "What counts as long-term exactly?" I asked. "Is there a number of days or is it more flexible?" Their mouth curved into something that was not a smile. "If someone is sleeping there regularly, that's long-term." They added one more detail that really locked it in. "We do walkthroughs during the year for maintenance and safety. If we find an undeclared occupant, it violates the agreement. We have removed people before for that exact issue." I heard that and pictured my cousin with his bags again. "Right, okay, thanks for clarifying," I managed, throat tight. I gathered the folder and hoped my grip looked normal. Outside the office, my heart pounded louder than the street noise. They had not accused me of anything yet, but it felt close. Like I had walked in holding a secret they almost recognized. On the way back, I texted my mother out of sheer panic. "Building doesn't allow another tenant in my unit. If they find out, I can lose my place." They said they have removed people for that before. I hesitated, then added, "This is serious, not me being dramatic." The typing bubbles appeared almost instantly, which did not surprise me. "So you went running to management about your own cousin," she wrote. "You make it sound like he's some illegal squatter. You always go straight to the worst-case scenario." I stared at the screen, amazed at how fast she flipped it. "I asked a general question," I answered, forcing myself to breathe. "I did not mention him or names or anything. I needed to know what the real risk actually is." They confirmed we can't just pretend he doesn't live here. The dots flashed again, then vanished, then came back. "People bend rules like that all the time," she wrote. "You think you're the only one with a relative staying. You are choosing fear over your own blood." Then came the line that still gets under my skin. "Paper isn't more important than the people who raised you." There it was. Blood over rules spelled out in a text. She wanted me to feel childish for respecting a contract. Like loyalty means ignoring every boundary that keeps you afloat. I felt anger push back against the shame this time. "If I get kicked out, no one wins," I replied. "You can't ask me to risk losing the roof I pay for." I'm not choosing fear, I'm choosing not to gamble my entire life. My thumb hovered before I hit send, but I sent it anyway. I knew that line would not land well with her. My father joined the thread next, which he rarely does. "You are exaggerating the danger," he wrote, plain and blunt. "You have a stable place, you are not on the streets. A relative on the couch will not end all that overnight." It stung how easily he dismissed something the office made sound huge. "You didn't hear them," I typed, then deleted it again. Explaining tone and tension never works over text like that. Instead, I wrote, "They told me exactly what could happen. They said they've removed tenants before." No emojis, no softening, just facts. "You always did believe outsiders before you believed us," came back. That one flattened me more than any other message. In their minds, the building was some nameless machine they could outsmart. I was supposed to stand with them and adjust reality. Instead, I kept quoting what the manager actually said. That night, we ended up on a video call without planning it. My mother rang first, then added my father before I answered. My cousin hovered behind me in the living room, listening. His shoulders already looked tense, like he expected a verdict. I propped the phone up and braced for whatever came next. Her face filled the screen, tired but still intense. You talked to them before talking to us, she started. We could have found solutions as a family. Instead, you ran to rules and strangers and fear. Each sentence landed like a small shove. I needed facts before I agreed to anything else, I answered. I'm not going to risk losing this apartment blindly. I have responsibilities here, I can't just pretend I don't. My father leaned into the frame and narrowed his eyes slightly. Responsibility also means stepping up when we ask. He waited a beat, then dropped the line that still echoes. A contract is ink on pages, he said. Your people are the ones who carried you long before that. You do not throw them aside because someone printed a rule. He spoke like this was a universal truth and I was breaking it. I could feel my cousin watching my back this whole time. I imagined how this speech sounded from his angle. He hears that his elders sacrificed and I owe them forever. He hears that his housing depends on me betraying a signature. No matter what, I come out either heartless or reckless. I'm not throwing anyone aside, I said, trying to stay calm. I offered him a short stay while we find a legitimate setup. I will help search, help call, help figure out housing. I just can't turn this place into something it's not. My voice shook on that last part, which annoyed me. This isn't about searches and phone calls, my mother snapped. He needs stability for the whole program, not a week here and there. You live alone with extra space and act like you're in danger. You don't see how selfish that looks from where we stand. There it was again, that word they love to reach for. I turned the camera slightly so they could see my cousin. He lifted a hand in a shy wave, caught in the crossfire. I don't want to make them lose their place, he offered. If this is too risky, I can talk to someone at school. His voice sounded small and tired through the speaker. My mother's expression softened at him instantly. No, you are not going to wander around begging strangers, she said. You belong with family while you find your footing. Then her face hardened again when she looked back at me. If she remembered that, this would not be an argument. I felt like a wall they kept bouncing off of. On one side, guilt and memory and old favors. On the other, rent, rules, and the fear of losing everything. I knew which side they believed should win every single time. I just was not ready to surrender that fast. I'm not changing what the manager told me, I said quietly. This place is for one person under this agreement. If they walk in and see 2 lives built here, we're done. We don't get a redo if that happens. I let that hang, even though I knew they hated silence. My father drew in a long breath that my phone mic caught. Fine, he finally said. We hear your fear louder than anything else. Just know every choice has a cost, including this one. Then he ended the call himself, no goodbye, just a cut. The screen went dark and showed my reflection for a second. Behind me, my cousin sat rigid on the couch. Sorry you had to hear that, I muttered, rubbing my forehead. He shrugged, eyes flicking toward the folded lease near the counter. So what do we do now, he asked. Before I could answer, my email pinged with a new alert. Subject line from building management, all caps, hard to miss. Notice of upcoming unit inspections for safety and compliance. The date sat there just days away, closer than I wanted. I stared at it and knew things had to change fast. My key caught in the lock and voices spilled through the door. Loud, overlapping, way too many for my tiny place. Someone laughed hard from inside, then something clattered against a surface. My heart started racing before I even got the key to turn. I forced the door open and the sound hit me in a wave. People filled the room, shoes everywhere, bags dropped in corners. Music thumped from a speaker on the floor near the couch. My cousin stood in the middle, drink in hand, grinning at someone. He saw me and his smile faltered for half a second. Hey, you're back early. He lifted his cup like a toast. We're just hanging out after a brutal day. He said it like I was the one interrupting. 3 strangers sat on my couch, squeezed together, loud and relaxed. One guy leaned back, feet toed against my coffee table. Another had his arm thrown behind the cushions like he owned them. A girl scrolled through her phone, barely glancing up at me. None of them looked like they planned to move soon. What is this? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. I dropped my bag near the door, pulse pounding in my ears. We had orientation from morning to late, everyone's wiped. He gestured around like this proved his point. Thought it'd be easier to crash here than wander around. We talked about keeping things low profile, I reminded him. About not drawing attention, about inspections coming up. He shrugged, taking a sip and avoiding my eyes. It's just a few people for one night, he argued. We'll keep it chill, nobody's breaking anything. That word chill made my skin crawl. I stepped further in and something else hit me. Under the sweat and cheap alcohol, I smelled my perfume. Not just faint recent. My stomach twisted because I knew where that came from. My bedroom door stood wide open down the short hallway. The light was on, spilling into the main room. That door is never open when I'm not inside. Why is my room open? I asked, already moving toward it. Nobody answered fast enough to calm me down. I reached the doorway and stopped dead. The bedspread was rumpled like someone had been sitting there. Drawers sat half closed, clothes pushed up and hanging out. My hairbrush lay on the pillow next to a small bottle. My jewelry tray had been shifted a few inches to the side. The girl from the couch appeared behind me, arms crossed tight. Sorry if we messed anything up, she murmured. She smelled like my perfume, the expensive one I rationed. I just needed a spritz before we went out, that's all. Like she'd borrowed lip balm, not something from a closed room. Why were you in here at all? I asked, my voice low. I don't invite people into this room when I'm gone. She glanced back toward the living room, looking for backup. He said it was fine, that we could get ready here. Her chin lifted toward my cousin like she handed him the mic. He appeared in the doorway, cup still in his hand. Relax, no one touched anything important, he started. They just needed space to change and freshen up. He walked in like the room belonged to both of us now. I felt something in my chest snap tight at that. I scanned the dresser and spotted it right away. The folder with my building papers sat slightly crooked. The edges were no longer lined up like I leave them. Did you go through my documents? I asked, staring at it. My fingers curled into my palms until my nails pinched skin. His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me. I just showed them the thing you're stressed about, he admitted. About them coming to check, about the rule or whatever. He laughed once, short and nervous. They thought you were exaggerating like I did at first. So he had opened it, spread my fear out like entertainment. My private panic turned into a story for his new friends. I walked over, flipped through the pages and found them shuffled. The part about extra occupants peeked out at an angle. It felt like someone had put hands directly on my spine. Get out of my room, I said, barely above a whisper. All three of them froze, the air suddenly heavier. The girl backed away first, mumbling something I did not catch. The two guys hovered in the hallway, unsure where to look. My cousin stayed where he was, jaw tightening. You're overreacting, he said, eyes flashing. They didn't wreck anything, they literally just changed and sat. He pointed at the papers with the cup in his hand. You're the one treating this place like a vault. The word vault made me want to throw something. This is the only space I have, I shot back. This room is the only spot no one touches. You don't invite people into it without asking me. My voice cracked in the middle and I hated that. But I kept going because if I stopped, I'd cave. From the living room, someone called out, half joking. Yo, are we in trouble or what? One of the guys asked. The noise snapped something loose in me. I walked back down the hall and faced the group. Yes, actually, you all need to go. They traded looks like I'd ruined their evening on purpose. We were just hanging, the girl said, grabbing her backpack. We weren't trying to cause drama. One guy rolled his eyes and drained his drink before standing. Another muttered something under his breath as he pulled on his jacket. My cousin stepped between me and the door, shoulders stiff. Come on, they have nowhere else to crash this late, he argued. They live far from here and trains are a mess now. We'll keep it down, I swear, you won't even remember tomorrow. That last part hit me wrong, like he counted on my silence. I don't care how far they live, I answered, pulse racing. They are not sleeping here. Not on my floor, not on the couch, not anywhere in this unit. I glanced at the friends as I said it. Grab your stuff now. They started packing in slow, messy movements. Zippers, shoes, whispered complaints, all scraping on my nerves. One of the guys scoffed as he passed me. Guess someone hates students, he muttered. The girl gave me a tight, fake smile and nothing else. When the door finally shut behind the last one, silence rang. Only the lingering smell of alcohol and my stolen perfume remained. My cousin turned toward me, face flushed, breathing heavy. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "They didn't trash anything, they were here for like an hour." "You unlocked my room for strangers," I reminded him, voice shaking. "You let them dig through my stuff and laugh at my worries." I pointed toward the now closed door to the bedroom. "You crossed every line I've tried to set since you arrived." My hands wouldn't stop trembling, even when I laced them together. He paced in a short line between the couch and the kitchen. "You act like I invited criminals in here," he snapped. "They're just classmates, normal people, not some threat. We're supposed to build connections, not hide from everyone." He threw his arms up like I didn't understand life. "Connections are not worth losing my roof," I answered. "Not worth inviting people into my private space without consent. The building is already doing checks soon, remember that. If they'd picked tonight instead, we'd both be in deep trouble." I watched that thought land on him and saw his jaw clench. He ran a hand over his face, tired and frustrated. "Fine, that was dumb," he muttered, eyes on the floor. "I shouldn't have opened your door, okay? But you're acting like I destroyed your life over one night." He shook his head and laughed without humor. "It's not one night, it's every choice stacking up," I said. "Showing up with bags, ignoring what I say about limits. Turning this place into your hangout, not your short stay." I pointed at the couch, still warm from the bodies that left. "I can't live like a guest in my own place." He stared at me for a long moment, eyes searching my face. "So what, you want me gone after tonight?" he asked. "You want me to pack everything and sleep on the street?" His voice cracked on that last word and I felt it. Guilt punched through me, but anger stayed louder. "There are dorm lists, roommates, people looking for shares," I reminded him. "You can talk to housing, to classmates, to advisors. You are not limited to this address, even if they told you that." He scoffed again and leaned against the wall. "Yeah, because you know how easy they make that process." "I know none of this is easy," I said, quieter now. "But I'm done being the default answer to everyone else's plans. I'm not losing everything I've scraped together so you can host parties." My throat burned as I forced the words out. "This isn't working, you can stay through the inspection, then you leave." He jerked upright like I had shoved him. "That's in 2 days," he shot back. "How am I supposed to find somewhere in 2 days?" His eyes were wide and glossy now, anger mixing with fear. "You're really kicking me out in a city I barely know." "I'm giving you a deadline, not tossing you on the sidewalk," I said. "You have a school full of resources, you're not helpless. I will help, call around, search listings, whatever I can. But after that visit from the building, you can't sleep here." Saying it out loud felt like slamming a door from the inside. He dropped onto the couch and dragged his hands through his hair. "This is insane," he muttered, barely looking at me. "They told me you were solid, that you'd have my back. They said you'd be difficult at first, then you'd come through." He laughed once, short and bitter. "I did have your back," I answered, voice rough. "I took you in without time to adjust to any of it. I've been arguing with half the family since you arrived. I've been walking around scared of losing this place every day." The words came out sharper than I intended, but they were true. He finally met my eyes, and for a second he looked sorry. Not a big apology, just a flicker of understanding. Then it passed, replaced by pure exhaustion. "Whatever," he muttered, slumping back against the cushions. "I'll figure something out after your precious inspection." That last phrase stung, but I didn't respond. I walked to my room, closed the door and turned the lock. I stood there, hand still on the knob, breathing hard. On the other side, I heard him shift and sigh and flip channels. I knew that line I'd drawn could not move again without breaking me. I wish I could say that after that night he stayed quiet. That he packed early and searched nonstop and kept the peace. But people rarely turn into ideal roommates just because you finally explode. All I really did that night was say the words out loud. The actual leaving and the fallout came with a whole new storm. The knock on my door was hard enough to rattle it. "Building inspection." My cousin looked at me from the couch, eyes wide. We had talked about this exact moment, just not like this. My pulse spiked so fast I felt a little dizzy. "Bedroom now." I grabbed his arm and pulled him down the tiny hallway. "Take your backpack, take your shoes, nothing stays visible." He snatched them up and squeezed into my room. I shut the door and flipped the lock with shaking fingers. "Do not make a sound," I whispered through the thin wood. Not a cough, not a message tone, nothing. He breathed out slow on the other side, trying to stay calm. I hated that it came to this, hiding him like contraband. I forced that thought down and went back to the door. When I opened it, the manager stood there with a clipboard. There was a maintenance guy behind them holding a toolbox. "Afternoon, quick walkthrough for safety checks," they said. My smile felt stiff, but I stepped aside anyway. Every step they took landed like a heavy threat. They moved around the living area, ticking things off quietly. Smoke alarm works, no visible damage, nothing blocking exits. Their eyes swept over the couch and the floor near it. For 1 second I was sure they saw ghosts of extra stuff. I kept my expression neutral and my hands still. "Any long-term guests staying with you?" they asked lightly. The question sounded casual, not really casual at all. My throat went dry in an instant. I forced myself to answer. "No, just me," I said, maybe a little too fast. They held my gaze for a beat that felt like 10. "Okay," they said finally, looking down to write something. "Remember to submit a request if that ever changes." I nodded once, afraid more movement would look suspicious. They checked the bathroom, ran the water, checked the vent. Then they thanked me and stepped back into the hallway. The door shut and I held my breath a few seconds. I waited for a knock, for footsteps coming back, for anything. Nothing came, only the usual noise from the building. I let out the breath and my legs almost gave out. My hands shook so hard I had to grab the counter. The bedroom door opened slowly behind me, hinges soft. He stepped out with his backpack still clutched to his chest. "Did they buy it?" he asked, voice low and strained. "Yeah," I answered, staring at the closed front door. "Barely." He dropped the bag onto the couch and slumped beside it. "That sucked," he muttered, rubbing his face with both hands. I could hear every word from in there. "I felt like some secret you're trying to bury." He winced as he said it, but he did not take it back. "You heard them ask about guests," I replied, still shaky. "If they'd seen you sitting out here, that was it. Notice on the door, and both of us scrambling tomorrow." I was not sure who I was trying to convince anymore. Maybe him, maybe you, maybe myself. He looked at me for a long moment, eyes red-rimmed. "Is this what it's going to be like the whole time?" he asked. "Me hiding every time someone knocks or checks something? You freaking out every time my friends want to come over?" His voice was tired now, less angry, more worn down. "This is what it is when the place is not mine to risk," I answered. "And when you treat my room like a lounge with door prizes." The memory of my open drawers flashed again, and my jaw tightened. "I can't keep doing this dance, it's wrecking me." The words came out sharper than I planned, but true. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "So your deadline after the inspection still stands?" he asked. "You're still telling me to find somewhere else now?" I watched his shoulders rise and fall, bracing for it. I hated the answer and still gave it. "Yes," I said, steady this time. "I meant it when I said that last night. I will help search, I will help call people, everything. But you can't live here full-time, not after all this." My chest ached as I heard myself stick to it. He nodded very slowly, like he had expected that. "I talked to a guy from orientation today," he finally said. "Someone on my team got dropped by a roommate last minute. They're desperate to fill a spot to split rent." He looked up at me, face tight, a little hopeful. "That is something," I answered, feeling a flicker of relief. "What kind of place is it? Is it near campus?" He shrugged, a small helpless gesture. "It's not great," from what he said, "but it's a roof. And it's not forcing you to hide me like contraband." For the first time in days, I felt my shoulders loosen. "When can you see it?" I asked, already reaching for my phone. "Tonight," he said, standing up again. He texted an address and said to come by after dinner. He grabbed the backpack, now suddenly useful instead of loaded. "Okay, good, I'll come with you," I replied. He waved that off, shaking his head quickly. "You're already the villain to half the family," he said. "If they hear you toured my new place like some agent, they'll explode." That stung because it was not wrong. "Text me when you get there," I told him. "And if it feels sketchy, walk back out, I mean it." He nodded, pulling on his sneakers near the door. I know it's not ideal, he said, hand already on the handle. But I'd rather squeeze into a bad share than keep hiding here. That line hit hard because I felt the same way. He stepped into the hallway, then paused and looked back. Thanks for letting me crash while I figured this out, he said. I know you didn't sign up for any of this mess. Then he left before either of us could ruin it with more words. When the door clicked shut behind him, the silence felt different. Not like the silence after a fight, more like after impact. I stood there with my hand hovering near the knob. Part of me wanted to open it and call him back. The other part pictured the notice that never came today. He sent a message an hour later with a quick update. Place is small, 2 guys already here, couch is rough but okay. Rent is doable, they're cool with me moving in this weekend. He added, not telling them family drama, just saying my lease fell through. I stared at that last sentence longer though. In the rest. Is it safe? I wrote back, fingers tight on the phone. Doors locked, neighbors seem fine, no weird vibes so far. It was not a glowing review, but it was something. Okay, I typed, then do it, I'll help with whatever you need moved. He replied with a simple thanks and a tired smile emoji. Telling my parents did not go well, surprise. I called because text would have felt too easy. I found a room for him with other students, I said. He's moving in this weekend, I'm helping with the boxes. I thought bringing a solution would soften everything. Boxes, my mother repeated, voice cold. So you really pushed him out like luggage. My father snorted in the background, an ugly sound. You could have chosen to be his support, he said. Instead you chose to be another landlord who says no. He is not homeless, I reminded them, frustration spiking again. He has a spot with people his own age near school. I am still here if he needs help, I am not vanishing. You are not here, my mother cut in, sharp as a blade. You are there for yourself, that is all. I almost hung up, I am not proud of that urge. I am protecting the only housing I can afford, I answered. I am doing what I can without destroying my own ground. No one forced you to move there, my father replied. You chose that independent life, now you choose everything that comes with it. That line stuck in my head long after the call. He is not wrong about choices, I know that. I chose the expensive city, the tiny place, the distance. I did not choose to be management, roommate and shield. They do not see the difference or they refuse to. The messages from extended relatives came in waves after that. Some were the usual guilt, just louder now. Family would have shared a room gladly, you turned him away. You got your degree and forgot how hard it is at the start. Each one chipped at me until I muted the thread again. One cousin wrote privately, which surprised me. For what it's worth, I get why you drew the line, she said. He told me about inspections and your lease and the party. I think they dumped too much on you and hoped you'd defold. I stared at that one message and almost cried in the kitchen. I visited his new place the following week with a small bag. He opened the door looking tired but a little lighter. Hey, welcome to the palace, he joked, stepping aside. It was tight, chaotic, and absolutely not glamorous. It was also not my problem to manage, which mattered. He showed me his corner, a thin mattress, a crate as a table. It's not exactly what they pictured when they promised your place, he said. But it's mine, at least for now, and no one has to hide. He looked older to me in that moment, not a kid at all. I realized I had spent weeks treating him like both. We carried the last of his things up from the street. A duffel, a box of books, a bag of random food. No one from my family came to help, no one called. It was just the two of us hauling his start up some stairs. We were both quiet, but it was not hostile that time. At the door when I was about to leave, he cleared his throat. For real, thanks for not throwing me under the bus to them, he said. I know they're blaming you for a lot of this. I know I made stuff harder sometimes with the parties and everything. He rubbed his neck awkward, but the words were there. I wasn't perfect either, I admitted, heat crawling up my face. I waited too long to set clear rules, then dropped a deadline. I snapped instead of explaining half the time. I'm not proud of some of the ways I reacted. Owning that did not erase anything, but it felt honest. We hugged at the door, quick and stiff, then tighter. You can visit if you promise not to bring a clipboard, he joked. I snorted, which broke some of the tension. Only if you promise not to turn my room into a hangout again, I replied. We both knew the deal and laughed anyway. Months later, my parents still talk to me less. They answer basic things, nothing deeper, nothing warm. Holiday plans get arranged without asking if I can travel. My mother still slips in comments about loyalty and obligation. My father stays quiet and lets her do the punishing. My cousin texts me class updates and apartment complaints sometimes. Roommate snores like a tractor, but at least he pays rent, he wrote once. Midterms suck, but I'm passing, advisor is happy for now. There is no mention of my apartment, no mention of moving back. We keep it that way on purpose, even if it hurts sometimes. So now I sit on my own couch again, just me. The same couch they wanted to claim for 4 whole years. The place feels bigger and smaller at the same time. I listen to my neighbors through the walls and check the door too often. I still jump a little when management emails anything with the word notice. Do I feel guilty sometimes? Yes, obviously. There are nights and I replay the party, the yelling, the deadline. When I think maybe I could have stretched more, swallowed more. Then I remember the inspection, the way my hands shook at the door. And I remember that if I lose this place, no one catches me. That is the part my family refuses to understand. They see one person in a small apartment and imagine extra space. They do not see the numbers, the fear, the constant tightrope feeling. They do not see me pulling a cousin out of my bedroom like contraband. They just see no and decide it means I stopped loving them. So yeah, I rent alone in a city that eats money. My family tried to turn that into free housing for 4 years. I fought it badly sometimes, but I fought it anyway. He ended up crowded in a different place with people his age. I ended up here, writing this for strangers who might actually answer straight.